international trade union advisor and one of the spokesperson for the coalition against chemical weapons in Kurdistan, Bert Schouwenburg. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Erem. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you. Very kind of you. You recently visited Kurdistan with the coalition against chemical weapons in Kurdistan. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, please?
Yeah, certainly. Well, I was part of a delegation comprising of journalists, trade unionists, and a couple of filmmakers. And we went to Iraqi Kurdistan to investigate reports that the Turks had been attacking people with various ordnance, including chemical weapons. Clearly, this is a very, very disturbing allegation. And we wanted to go out there and see for ourselves what the situation was. One of our number had been there previously and had indeed obtained first-hand evidence of what the Turks had been doing.
Thank you. Exactly, that was the second question. What are the Turks doing inside of the Iraqi Kurdistan, and what you're going to say about all these chemical weapons allegations?
It seems that what the Turks are trying to do is build up to something, and this was confirmed to us by sources in Kurdistan, by people who had access to the PKK up in the mountains. The Turks are trying to build a corridor some 50 kilometers wide between Turkey and Kurdistan. And so it would appear what they're trying to do now in Iraqi Kurdistan is replicate what they've done in Syria, where they mounted an invasion, pushed many of the Kurdish population out, mistreated them, and then replaced them with jihadist people to inhabit those areas. So it looks like they're trying to form a sort of buffer zone between themselves and Iraqi Kurdistan, in the same way as in Syria. And now what they have done, they've established over 70 military bases in the space that they've established between Turkey and Iraqi Kurdistan.
Thank you. During this visit, did you question the local politicians about this, and what were their response if you spoke to some people?
Yes, we were able to go to Erbil to the regional parliament, where we spoke to an independent MP. We also spoke to the PUK, and to the KDP as well. As you know, the last of those. That's the party that's in charge of the regional government. When we spoke to their spokesperson, he at first denied that there was any presence of Turkish forces within the borders of Iraqi Kurdistan, but he soon backtracked from that point. But he was unable to provide any reasonable explanation as to why this was allowed to happen. What he tried to say was that it wasn't the responsibility of the Kurdish regional authority to deal with the Turks there, but in fact it was the responsibility of the government in Baghdad, and they had no powers to intervene and take any action against the Turks. Now, whether this is what the true picture is somewhat unclear. But it would appear that there is an arrangement between the PDK government and its leader with the Turks to allow this to happen. We can't confirm this, and it may well have something to do with the oil pipeline that's been constructed between Iraqi Kurdistan and Turkey, which is earning an awful lot of money for those in power in Iraqi Kurdistan. But as I say, I can't prove it one way or the other. But I can say that the KDP's answers were very unsatisfactory.
Thank you. What has been the reaction of the UK media and politicians to your delegation's report of the Turkish atrocities?
When we came back, we issued a statement detailing with what we'd seen and who we'd spoken to, and in that statement, it said there was pretty conclusive proof that the Turks had indeed, or are indeed, using chemical weapons in Iraqi Kurdistan. And what they're certainly doing is trying to displace local people, local farmers, local villagers, by what can only be described as a campaign of terror. Now we put all this in the statement and circulated it to the media in the UK, but sadly and unsurprisingly, no one took it up. Although I'm led to believe that the Turkish authorities condemn what we put out as been the work of terrorists. But then again, that's something we've heard before. As I say, it's disappointing, but not surprising. In the past, if Britain's perceived enemies, such as the Syrians, were suspected of using chemical weapons, they would be all over them, as we've seen. But because it's the Turks in Iraqi Kurdistan, nobody seems to be that interested.
Thank you. Why does NATO tolerate one of its members behaving in this way, do you think? What's the reason behind all this?
Well, I think that's a very important question, because doubtless NATO are very much aware of what Turkey is doing. Turkey is a NATO member. In fact, I understand it has the second largest standing army within NATO. So NATO is fully aware of what Turkey is doing, and therefore one can only surmise that it's done with NATO's blessing, or at best it's done with NATO turning a blind eye. Clearly, they're aware of what is going on, and so you would think that therefore to allow Turkey to do what it's doing suits their strategic aims, and they're using Turkey to do their dirty work in the Middle East. Beyond that, it's difficult to say exactly what level of communication there is between Erdogan and the other NATO members. But there's certainly no calls from NATO for Turkey to cease and desist what they are doing in northern Iraqi Kurdistan.
Thank you, dear Bert. Lastly, very short, very briefly, what should be the next step in the campaign for the Kurdish freedom, bearing in mind that Erdogan is up for an election next year? So, what else needs to be done?
Well, despite the media silence, I think all we can do is keep campaigning, bring it to the attention of the politicians, bring it to the attention of the press, and keep doing it. But you make a very good point about Erdogan and his re-election next year. I mean, we all presume he is going to stand for re-election next year, and he's not going anywhere, because I think he certainly has a sense of Turkish history, and I think he believes that Turkish frontiers should expand beyond what they are now. And it should be borne in mind that 2023 not only sees elections in Turkey, it's also the 100th anniversary of the Lausanne Treaty, which Erdogan thinks is part of the reason that Turkey is not the state that it should be in terms of its borders, because the colonial powers at the time, Britain and France, carved up the Middle East to suit themselves. So I think it's a very dangerous juncture. Erdogan has shown wise actions not only in Syria, not only in Iraq, but also in Cyprus and elsewhere, that he has what we might term an expansionist mentality, and he he may see his destiny as being the person who almost recreates the Ottoman Empire, and makes Turkey great again, as he would see it. So I think it's a very dangerous juncture, and a very dangerous time. But as I say, we just have to keep on trying to bring it to the attention of the politicians, trying to bring it to the attention of the media, in the hope that it gets the attention it deserves, and goes towards stopping the aggression towards the Kurdish people, both inside Turkey's borders and outside it too.
International Trade Union advisor and one of the spokesperson for the coalition against chemical weapons in Kurdistan, Bert Schouwenburg, thanks for joining us. Thank you for your valuable comments today.
Thank you, Erem. As always, a pleasure to be on the show.
Thank you.